Well, it's that time again, that time when we meander into our favorite virtual watering hole and do something amazing. We're going to solve world peace today. Woohoo! I'm joined by Greg and Ken. I'm your host, Chris, and this is Three Pastors Walk Into a Bar. It is time for that most favorite segment of the show. The segment of the show that people wait every week for.
Bated breath.
You know, every Sunday somebody comes up to me and they say, "Can we hear the disclaimer?
Can we have the disclaimer in our announcements?
Can we just put the disclaimer at the beginning of the service?"
So soothing.
It's
it brings peace to the body.
Yeah, and less liability.
We especially need it today.
Ultimately, yes. Yeah, everybody listening, we do love you. We want you to love us.
Well, you want them to love you.
Yeah, you do care.
So take it away, Ken.
Today especially, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the respective speakers, and they do not necessarily reflect the opinions, policies, or doctrines of Athol Baptist Church and its members.
Amen.
Amen.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I mean, is that really true?
Does not necessarily, yes.
No.
It might in some cases. It might not in others. We're not trying to establish our first, foremost, and final position on all things here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we've solved world peace before.
We're the pastoral
That is
staff.
true.
Everything stops here, right?
That is true. Like, we have solved world peace in the past. So it's just like
It's
every once in a while
momentary.
we have to dust off the old laptop and, get back to solving world peace again. Because as soon as you solve it, some Yahoo comes along,
messes it up,
and says, "Hey, you know what? We need to have some war. Military-industrial complex needs some money." And then, there's some attack going on somewhere, and then we got to get the book. You got to get it out, and then you got to solve world peace all over again. So,
Listen, somebody's got to do it.
it's exhausting. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Psalms 122:6. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they be secure who love you. So, you know the drill. Whenever two foreign countries go to war against each other, America must choose a side and support for someone to blame. And it always happens that we don't all agree on who each one of those people should be. And typically we have, the protests to kind of go along with it. So the media wades into the debate with their now standard biases to sensationalize the division and thereby capitalize on ratings, advertising revenue, and political opportunity, which is the state of our media today. I'm not even sure that I would call it. I wouldn't even call it news. It's more like
Personal opinion.
It's not even that. It's more like tabloid entertainment.
Yeah, it's the spin machine.
Yeah.
The spin machine is stronger than ever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lots of that going on both sides. University campuses populated with naive and impressionable young adults eager to express their newfound adulthood and freshly minted zeal for critical theory cluster together to protest the oppressor du jour, certain of their moral superiority while simultaneously objecting to any moral absolutes.
I was feeling especially inspired.
Yeah.
That day.
Did you write that, or did you get an AI to write that?
It's pretty good. Yeah,
I mixed too many metaphors for an AI.
And it's true. a few weeks ago it was Ukraine. And then here recently it's been the immigrants. So we've been going after we've been protesting for the illegal immigrants. They're not misplaced aliens or whatever, you want to say. They are indeed illegal aliens. And then now it's all about Palestine. And you hear from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And the call for the expulsion and potentially the genocide of the Jewish people. And some of them realize what they're saying. A heap of them have no idea. I was watching a thing yesterday where a guy went into one of these protests and just asked some random girl. He was like, "So what are you guys protesting?" And she was like, "Yeah, I don't know." And she looked over at her friend. She's like, "What are we protesting again?"
Just a way to get out of class.
Yeah.
And that pretty much
Tells it all.
that summarizes that whole deal. It's like you got 3 or 4 agitators that just get all these kids riled up that just want to be there when the cops show up. And
Greg's generation made that popular.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Greg.
Hey, we do what we can do, to bring peace to the world.
How many protests were you arrested at?
Let's see.
I think you have a story that Adriana was arrested at one, wasn't it?
No.
That would make
somebody else.
sense, actually.
I was always a little too out of my mind to even. Is there a protest today? You want to go?
Hey, man.
Nah, let's stay
Is there
here.
a protest, man? What are we protesting? Protesting pool coverings. That's still my favorite movie from Cheech and Chong. They had the blue tarp over the pool, and the police helicopter's over the top, and he's stuck out a hole, and he's pretending like he's swimming on the tarp.
On top of a ladder. Yeah. The first planking.
That was the first planking. Yes, it was. So anyways, like they're chanting, they're holding up these signs, the oblivious to the origin of the phrase over a decade ago when it was proclaimed by the leader of Hamas at the 25th anniversary of the movement's founding. What those students fail to acknowledge is that by co-opting that slogan, they are calling for extermination of all Jews or genocide, which, if aimed at any other people group, they would be protesting vehemently. Mm-hmm. If that was reversed and you were saying about Gaza from the border to the sea, Israel will be free, they would be absolutely insane. They'd be livid, going crazy. And so it just kind of adds into the stress of the whole ordeal. And obviously this thing all started when Hamas, without provocation, attacked Israeli civilians. It wasn't even a military attack. It was just a mass murder. And they flew in ultralights and drove in what the military would term a technical, which would be just like any kind of like a vehicle that has been turned into a military vehicle, whatever. And you just started killing and taking just random civilians, and not just like a couple, like over 1,000. It was abysmal to watch. And that you can have a group of people, I don't care if it's Israel or if it's Ukraine or if it's, Russia, England, Morocco, Nigeria, whatever. I would hope that if you had a foreign body enter into that country and murder over 1,000 people in cold blood, that people would unite on the moral high ground that murder is wrong, period. But that's not the world we live in today. We live in a world where people will put up signs of protest in support of people that would go in and just in cold blood, in their face, shoot an infant dead.
Mm-hmm. And it went beyond that. I mean, there was rape, there was beating. It was absolutely.
And it wasn't isolated cases of rape either.
No,
it was premeditated, predetermined,
part
part of the plan that they would go in and rape everything in sight, just to give the finger to Israel.
And now our college campuses are supporting those same people.
And there's no basis in reality for any of their conversation. It's like if you go in and maliciously attack the people of a sovereign nation and murder them, you probably should expect to get military retaliation in return. I mean, that would make sense. Like, Israel has the right to defend their sovereignty. Whether you like it or not, it really makes no difference. And then when you have a terrorist group like Hamas that was democratically elected into office by the Palestinian people, by the way, this idea that Palestine is living in some kind of prison encampment, that is not true. Palestine has been free for some time. They were given all that. Israel backed away.
Yeah.
They walked off. They were like, okay, you guys have it. It's yours. They gave it to them. Walked away from it and said, you govern it. You take it over. You do whatever you want to do with it. We're going to put a wall up because we don't want to have any part of it. And what did the Palestinian people do? They voted in a terrorist organization, and that terrorist organization has been in charge ever since. And all of the UN aid, all of the foreign aid that has been going into that country, Hamas has been stealing it and utilizing it to fund their war machine. And so it's so weird that Israel responds with military force in areas where Hamas is keeping their military assets, which happens to be under hospitals and under schools and, places that they think that Israel won't respond. Israel doesn't have a choice. It's like, we have to do this or they will be back and they will kill our children. So it's like, as gross as it sounds and as gross as it is, I don't know what people are expecting. Like, war is ugly. It's disgusting. War has never been good.
Or fair.
No. And to think that you're going to be able to go in and surgically remove every single terrorist from a community of people that support these terrorists, voted them in from a terrorist state, it's just an asinine thought. It's just a ridiculous idea. It just goes to speak to their inability to grasp the nuance of the situation. It's way more nuanced than Israel is bombing hospitals. That's
Israel has shown so much restraint over the years, and then particularly in this conflict. I mean, they waited weeks and weeks and weeks and telegraphed that this response is going to be unprecedented. You better prepare. Get out of the way.
And then even when they would prepare a bomb strike, they would text the people in that area and say, hey, you need to get out of there because we're fixing to destroy this place.
Yeah, they drop leaflets, the whole thing, and then Hamas tells them, oh, no, it's a lie.
Yeah, it's a lie. It's propaganda. Don't worry about it.
So talk about Hamas helping their citizens?
Yeah. No, putting their people up as a human shield so that they hope that Israel won't do it. The level of restraint is bonkers because, in truth, Israel could have just carpet bombed Gaza. It's not that big. They could have just carpet bombed the whole thing and annihilated it off the face of the earth, turned it into a heaping pile of rubble in a day and not thought anything of it. The very fact that they're sending troops in and putting people at risk to do what they're doing is just another demonstration of restraint, really.
Yeah. They could have done what Russia did in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Israel knows desert warfare, tank warfare. They could have just rolled through that place in a couple of days and flattened the whole thing indiscriminately, and they didn't.
Yeah. Trying to save lives, and here we are, as a nation, you got people supporting him and you got people chastising him. But, you know, I have to say this. There are a lot of Democrats in Washington, D.C. that have been in full support of Israel. And our nation has always been a firm supporter of Israel. And we should be a firm supporter of Israel because it's like the only ally that we have. You know, we might have like Saudi Arabia as a friend. I don't think I would consider them an ally by any stretch of the imagination.
When the circumstances are right and it serves
Yep.
Saudis.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But Israel has been a supporter of the United States ever since its founding. And so when we have allies that are in trouble, we should help them, obviously. But that being said, I have to wonder if the support is not based on financial gain. Because it seems to me like when these flashes of war happen, there are certain groups of people that gain wealth from those things. Mm-hmm. And we're not talking about like a couple $1 billion. We're talking billions of dollars. Like that last foreign aid package that was signed, it sent $61 billion to Ukraine and $26 billion to Israel.
The interesting part about that is point number one, that $61 billion package for Ukraine, a lot of that was forgivable loans. So there's interest to be made on that. Guess where that'll go. And then the other part of that was something like 60% of that aid package will be spent either in or for the United States of America.
Yeah, for its war machine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Either replenishing weapons that we've already sent to Ukraine and Israel or to manufacture new ones to send.
Yeah. You know, I don't agree with a whole lot of what Russell Brand talks about, but one thing that he is on target with is the power and the complexity of the military industrial complex. You know, we have a military industry here in the United States of America that is unrivaled anywhere else. There's a reason that there is no military on the face of the planet that can stand against our military. It's because of the vast amount of dollars that are pumped into our military complex in one way, shape, or form, in ways that we don't even know are happening. I mean, and these people are just making money hand over fist. It's just it's astonishing.
I did read just this last week on China's military, not the Navy, but the Air Force and ground forces are matching ours now.
That's not true.
And well,
no, it's not true.
How do you know that?
By what measure?
Yeah.
Numbers?
Mostly, yeah, it was numbers. It was the amount of aircraft in the air that airworthy.
If
the
that
number
were
of people
true,
on the ground.
If that were true, Taiwan would already belong to China. There is a reason why they're not pushing forward, and it's because a lot of that is just Chinese propaganda. We have known for a long time that China lies about its numbers. Mm-hmm. They lied about their COVID numbers. They lie about their military numbers all the time. You know, one of the things that I've seen reported over and over again is how inflated their military numbers are, and with their population on deep decline, it's only slated to get worse. Like they're generations away from their population beginning to bounce back after their failed policies of population control. And so China is not even a concern. Like this is a weird thought, but imagine this, right? We have all these countries. We have Russia, who is struggling to maintain control of a country like Ukraine. And Ukraine's nothing. Like, Ukraine's pathetic. It's like they're not even, they're barely on the list of countries that have enough military to do anything. But somehow Russia, a nuclear power, is having this really hard time taking this country over. They should have been able to take this. Like when we went into Iraq, it was like 3 days. 3 days and we had control of that country. Like, what's going on? It's either that they're dinking around or they don't have the military power that they say they do, right? And that's exactly the thing with China. You know, it's like if China was as powerful as it is, we wouldn't be able to go into the South China Sea. It would be a done deal, right? If they could match our military, the simple fact of the matter is that there is no military force on the face of the planet that can match the might of the United States military, which is terrifying. If you think about the people that are in charge, I'm more concerned about our own military in the United States of America than I am about China or Russia or, you know, pick one, Iraq. You know, who cares, right? None of those countries can even come close to touching us. But I tell you, who can? Our own. You know,
and the one thing that both Russia and China have discovered and are exploiting now is they don't need a military to bring us down.
No.
They can bring us down from within, with propaganda and through digital means, hacking in, and creating disruption and chaos internally. So we just implode.
Yeah, they're definitely
super cheap.
Well, united we stand, divided we fall.
Right.
You know, and so you know that would be the ultimate game of all that, but.
So, well, this information regarding China is from the DoD, Department of Defense, and I was wrong. It talked about the largest navy, 370 ships and submarines, Air Force rapidly catching up to Western Air Forces. So, what you're saying, it sounds logical, but why would the DoD be putting stuff out like this to say, hey, China's growing, should we be concerned?
Well, that's obvious.
Well, who do you think?
It is obvious.
They want more money to keep up the race and win it.
Yeah, who do you think would
ahead.
benefit from a bill to shore up defenses against that?
Which is
their
biggest challenge right now is.
And who do you think is
campaigning for
linked
more
in
money.
with all of those D&D outfits? It would be Lockheed Martin and all these other like military companies that are creating military weapons. It's like you just got to keep the war machine going so you can keep funding this multi-trillion-dollar business over and over again.
Talk about too big to fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's not GM, it's not Ford.
Oh no. And you can just print more money.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never have to worry about solvency because then you just have the United States government print $61 billion.
Yeah,
out of thin air.
Their biggest enemy is Congress.
Yeah. Well, and that's not even, you just buy them.
So I'm hearing you guys saying nuclear, World War, that type of thing isn't going to happen. Because the people with the money are not going to allow it. No. And not only that, everybody knows that nobody wins a nuclear war. Right. There would be nothing left for you to rule. So it would be absolutely pointless. So the idea of a massive scale nuclear conflict is not even in the scope of reality. But I'm not thinking about reality. I'm thinking about the idiot that's got his finger over that button in a nuclear country that loses his.
That idiot would be assassinated in 20 minutes.
Before or after he pushed the button?
Before. It would never happen.
Well, you have a much higher esteem for the human race.
No, it's not. That's not it at all. The military industrial complex would have him murdered before he could ruin their monopoly. It's not a high esteem of it at all. It's a very low esteem of it, actually. It's very dark and it's scary that our elected officials actually have basically zero power in the scope of this thing.
So initially, nuclear power made us powerful. We were feared by every nation on the planet, and now other nations have that capability. What do you think is, besides the war machine, is there anything else holding that back besides money?
Well, I mean, I guess you could say that the Holy Spirit's holding it back, but I mean, in reality, we have no guarantee of being here when Jesus returns, and so, I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think it's just that there is a group of, and I don't think it's like particularly like the WEF or any of that kind of group. I'm not necessarily sold on these giant conspiracy theories. I just think that there's a lot of people that are making a lot of money, and collectively they make a lot of decisions. And they may not even agree with one another, but they agree with one thing. They like that $1 billion check. Until that's disrupted, you're not going to have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. But if that's disrupted, and the Joe Bidens of the world actually do have power to do stuff, then you're right. That would be a terrifying thought. I think
it's more likely to wind up either being something accidental or a terrorist with a suitcase bomb walks into.
It'll be localized. But that's the reason they are so afraid of Trump, is because he can't be controlled like that. And that's the reason they hate him so much. If he gets into office again, I would say the likelihood of him being assassinated is in the 50th percentile.
My wife and I have had that conversation so many times. We're amazed that somebody hasn't even attempted at this point. Well, I mean, they're trying to destroy him politically, obviously. But it would be so much easier. Do you think? Oh man, we are way off.
That's okay.
Mind. I was just thinking, what would happen to this country if somebody assassinated Trump?
He would become a martyr.
Yeah, absolutely. And
he'd become a martyr, and it would
the dividing line would.
Oh yeah, it could even, in the worst case scenario, it could trigger cessation.
Yeah.
In the worst case scenario, we're on the verge of that already. I mean, if the border crisis hasn't shown you that there is a clear cessationist vein running right through the middle of the country, right? I mean, it's been fully demonstrated, right? So, obviously, it would just take one powder keg going off to elicit that cessation and get people in arms, and then it would just be a nightmare scenario at that point for the world. Because if the United States, and this is one of the things that people don't consider oftentimes, is if the United States were to go into a civil war and withdraw in and of itself, the world would starve.
We're that much of a leader still.
The world is dependent upon our economy. Yeah. And that's a terrifying thought.
Especially the way our economy is.
Even China. I mean, you think about it. Most of China's economy is based on the trade with the United States of America. If the United States of America were to stop trading because we were inwardly fighting, China would starve.
Yeah, the world economy would go into a tailspin.
Yep. And there would be, it would take decades to recover from it.
You mean there'd be no more Temu? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that would be rough. Might not be any more Amazon. I mean, it's an interesting thought. There's a lot more to it. It's like, especially like when you're talking about China, because it's like, China's got a lot of boats. I would say that one of our destroyers would probably match up to 5 of theirs, but given that, China can't afford to enter into a conflict with the United States of America. Not now.
No.
That's why they're trying to get the petrodollar. They're trying to get the oil money, because if they can get the oil money, then they can start supporting their own economy. And our politicians are too stupid to see that. It's like you have China and Russia, they're down in the Middle East trying to coordinate the exchange from the petrodollar to the petro yuan, and if that happens, then we will have to start worrying about China a lot.
petrodollar. Explain that.
Well, the oil
industry.
Oil is traded on the American dollar right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it bolsters our economy for our currency to be used in the trade of oil. But if that were to be taken away, then, we would lose that entire market.
Yeah. And confidence in others.
Yep. And so it would be devastating. So this whole green energy thing, a piece of that is definitely worrying about climate crisis. But I'll guarantee you that there are some politicians that are like, we got to get away from the petrodollar and create another type of dollar, because it's not substantially economically more sound to do green energy than it is to do oil, because the amount of investment in infrastructure that it would take would far surpass what you're going to be spending in oil the next decade, 2 decades, 3, maybe in the next century. I mean, the level of solar panels that you would have to place for the sun's energy to be viable is just, it's astronomical.
We'd all be living in shade.
Yeah. I mean, you would never see the sun again because you'd be covered in solar panels and wind turbines or, whatever. But there's a piece of that is like, yeah, we got to get away from oil, because if we lose it, we have to be able to fund a different industry. And don't think that energy companies aren't thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't one out there that isn't investing in alternative energies already.
Exactly.
Yep.
The writing's on the wall, and these guys are forecasting. That's what oil companies do. They forecast, and so they're forecasting. It's like, if we lose the petrodollar, we have to have another industry that we're investing in. Might as well be lithium, or might as well be, solar panels, or might as well be wind turbines, or whatever I'm going to use Ken's term, energy source du jour is of the time.
Du jour.
So yeah, it's just, but anyways, it's all about money. It really is. And it's disturbing. We're sending $61 billion to Ukraine in coupled with what we have already sent over there. I don't know what that figure is, but it's got to be astronomical at this point, the amount of money that we have sent over to Ukraine to help them defend against this Russian onslaught. And come to find out, it's like, well, Russia wasn't completely unprovoked. We had CIA assets in Ukraine. We were launching missions from Ukraine. It's like when Ukraine starts talking about joining NATO, it's like, hey, these are like if they were doing all that stuff in Mexico, we might be doing that in Mexico. We did it in Cuba. They brought some missiles into Cuba, and we freaked out. Imagine, if you're Russia and the United States is planting people in Ukraine, setting up bases of operation, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as simple as Russia went in and invaded a country unsolicited. They're not Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a terrorist organization. They're a nation, and they're concerned about their sovereignty. Whereas over in Israel, that's a whole different story. That was a terrorist organization that attacked a group of innocent people
based on ideology
and murdered them. And what's bonkers is a lot of these kids that are protesting are LGBTQ friendly, people, yelling from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It's like, okay, we'll go over there and try and live your life the way that you're living it now and see what happens to you. They're going to toss you down from the top of a building and kill you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
is it just our society today and the left media that is preventing them from seeing the truth?
Well, biblically, it would be Satan is blinding them from the truth. That's a fact. But I think that he's definitely utilizing media and social media and a lot of these people who have just sold into the idea of critical theory, whether it's race theory or economic theory or whatever, this whole oppressed kind of mentality.
Right.
And so, yeah, we
watched a apocalyptic movie the other night. I can't think of the name of it. I was trying to look it up.
Shocker. There's barely any of those out today.
But it was interesting in that these people rented a house on Long Island, and big beautiful place, and the owners show up in the middle of the night, and it's just this really weird scenario going on, and the guy who rented the house out, they went on vacation but had to come back, and he's really weird. He's not acting, normal, and well, he knows what's going on. And there was all the internet, all communications within the United States went down. They don't know how. They didn't bring that part out, EMP or whatever.
That sounds like what happened in Red Dawn.
A similar type thing. And so what you ended up with is no communication and factions.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so cool because one scene was they could see the city. They could see New York. And all of a sudden, all these explosions and bombs going off and gunfire and everything. And I was like, okay,
there they go.
There they go.
Yep. And once that train starts, there ain't no getting off.
But it was there was a different kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The process this guy was aware of like a year before. And he saw it coming. He
was the whistleblower who wasn't heard.
That wasn't he had friends that were killed, but the communication was the one that got me.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody is freaking out because they've got their phone in their hand, and you can do anything on your phone that you want to do, but you can't communicate, can't use it for everything else.
All the channels of communication have been shut down.
Yeah, been shut down. And how people
premise.
It was very interesting.
And
it ended that way too. It's like it was one of those movies at the end where we look at each other and go, "Well, that sucks."
Well, you want to know what saved Ukraine was when Elon Musk decided to retask Starlink satellites to go over Ukraine. That's one of the things that saved them. And he did that free of charge. It was like, okay, well, here's some satellites so you guys can talk. Have a good time. That's
pretty shrewd.
That's a lot of power, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was not aware of
history.
That.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that happened when they got taken over, and all that stuff got blown up and everything. Is he retasked a lot of Starlink satellites to go to Ukraine.
I wonder what he would have been like in college. Was he going to parties? Was he, partying, or was he?
Probably not.
He's probably had his several companies started already and everything.
Yeah, I mean,
the guy's pretty amazing.
There's something, man. He is something else. That's for sure. He's doing some amazing work over there,
and he seems to have ethics.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would. He does value free speech, but he's kind of on the side of free speech at the expense of morality. And if you subscribe to X, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's like you can literally get anything on X.
Yes.
There's no limits. Like there's no cutoff.
There's the problem, right? Who sets the limits?
Well, and that's what he's saying. Yeah. He's like, I'm not here
to set the limits.
Set your limits on what you can partake in. I'm just here to provide you with all the stuff, right? Here's the world. So do with it what you want.
The bad people, the evil people will do
the whole controversy around Wikipedia when it started getting traction.
Yeah.
Was anybody could post anything up there, and you have to self-police yourselves in the sandbox.
Yeah.
It's up to you whether you run it into the ground or not.
That worked out well, didn't it?
That's Pastor Richard's favorite.
Yeah, he loves it when you quote Wikipedia.
I know.
Yeah.
If I do it today, it's usually just to bug him.
So, moving on into the number of people who have died over there. So, according to the Jewish News Services in October of 2023, with a population of about 9.73 million, Israel is about 1/34th the size of the United States, which is about 335.55 million people. So we're talking about a tiny, tiny little place.
It's like about what, the size of California, population-wise?
I guess, yeah, maybe
9 million.
But California's bigger in area.
Isn't that bonkers?
It's like Vermont or New Jersey is the size of Israel.
It blows me away that the world is going nuts over this little spit of land that's just been there for centuries. And for centuries, organizations and people and armies and nations have obsessed over this little tiny little spit of land that God gave to the Jews.
It is not impressive in terms of resources. It's not like there's diamonds under there or cobalt or...
It's not really.
There's some oil, but not a whole lot else.
Produce.
That's what they made there. They created there.
Created the produce.
So,
it's all philosophical. Yeah. It's all ideological. It's like one of my favorite movies is Kingdom of Heaven. I don't know if you've watched that.
Love that movie.
And one of the things that Saladin says towards the end, when they finally surrender Jerusalem to him, he gives them safe passage to leave. He asks them something to the effect of, "What is Jerusalem?" And Saladin says, "Nothing." And then he turns back around and he goes, "Everything." And that's kind of like, that's the truth, man. It's like, to these religious organizations, it is ground zero of the ideological war. It's why they hate them so much.
One of the things that I looked up is the Jerusalem of today, the Jerusalem of biblical times. And it's quite a broad spectrum of responses to that. Some were like, yeah, it's God's chosen people. Others were like, no, absolutely not. It has nothing to do with the Bible because of the way they've, dispersed and turned away from God. But at the same time, we know that come the end, there's going to be 144,000 Jewish virgin men that will travel throughout the world.
Well, they're already doing that. Jehovah's Witnesses have already done that. So
yeah, they had the problem, though, when they went over 144,000.
Well, I mean, don't get technical, Greg. Okay?
I'm sorry.
Come on, let's not be ridiculous.
But don't take it literally, Greg. You can't take it literally.
Come on.
Isn't that an interesting thought, though, when you put that into play?
The truth of it is that when it comes to Revelation, we don't really know what that actually looks like. Like, even, any of the numerical stuff, it's like everything over there is prophetic in its scope. And every time a new administration comes into play, every time a new world event happens, you got these guys that come around with their prophetic, conferences, and they, link all the things in the Bible to, this is the lion with wings and this is the bear and, like Russia and China. And, and then you draw all these red lines towards each of the leaders and the Pope and, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, the truth of it is that there's no literal mention of anything that we know today that exists that is or could be or is not what's mentioned in Revelation. Everything in this world could be blown to pieces, and then what is being prophesied in Revelation could happen 5 centuries from now, for all we know. We don't know.
Yeah.
And we don't even know that 144,000 is actually a literal number, or if it's representative of something of that time period.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we don't really know a heap about Revelation, other than to just know what it's there for. But we do know this, that God promised his people that they would be prosperous, and he promised them a land filled with milk and honey, and everything that he gave them, which far extends past the river, like and farther north and farther south, like what God gave them actually is much larger than what they actually have held on to in disobedience. But we do know that God's promised them that, but all of that is there, all that stuff is going to be obliterated. It's going to be annihilated at some point.
Burned up.
In a fervent heat. And there will be a new heaven and a new earth. And I'm convinced that on that new earth, there will be a nation of Israel that will be established for his chosen people. And that we will live in union with them as the extension of God's bride. So...
Okay, I got a thought. That's extremely interesting. Am I hearing you say that you think, not solidly, but there's potential that Revelation is actually taking place after the new heaven? The new
earth? No. That's not what I said.
Okay.
No, because you're going to have Revelation take place, but what I'm saying is that we don't know that that's in our generation,
well, absolutely
or the
not.
generation after us, or 20 generations from now. I mean, we have no idea when that's going to take place. I know that the people that think that we're living in the millennial age right now, it's like once that 1,000 years is up, it's like good luck. It's when you try and place numbers on things in specificity.
Yep.
Yeah, that's when you start running into problems, because those things are not intended to be literal. It's like the number of man is 666, right? It's like, well, that's not the way that it's translated in even some ancient manuscripts, right? So it's like, it's not like when that happens, some guy's going to come along with a stamper and put 666 on your hand or on your forehead. I mean, it's metaphorical. It's allegorical. It's like it's what Paul saw, or what John saw, and what he interpreted would be the best way to tell people 100 years from there what he saw. And what he saw was beyond the scope of what he could understand. Right. So,
or put into words.
And so, people go mad trying to.
Well, you said it yesterday in your sermon. I read the end of the book. We win.
Well, and I think ultimately that's really what the book of Revelation is all about. It's Comfort, not about trying to accumulate solutions or trying to interpret who the lion with eagle's wings is, or the bear, or whatever. All that stuff is irrelevant to the fact that Jesus will return. He will claim the title deed to the earth. There will be armies that will raise up against him, and he will destroy them with the words that come out of his mouth. And then he will reign. And then once he's done reigning, they will rise up again. He'll be done with it. And then he will annihilate. God will bring everybody up. He will judge them. And then he'll annihilate everything and create a new heaven and a new earth the way he intended it to be, without sin. And so, as long as you know that, all this other stuff is just like, how do we do the job that God's given us to do in the scope of what's been made available to us,
and how we respond to what we're talking about right now.
Well, yeah,
war in Israel.
Yeah, it's like you got people right now that are just out there like, oh, well, this is definitely the end of the world because Israel's at war with Hamas or whatever. It's like, okay, well, imagine what people in World War II thought when Jews were being annihilated by the Nazi regime, and there was literally war and rumors of war over the entire planet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we don't really have the precedents that they had in World War II, yet we're freaking out about it more than they were. It's like we've become very desiring of an apocalypse, it seems.
We're freaking out about immature teenagers on college campuses.
Yeah.
That don't seem to have a clue to life.
That's college kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's been college kids ever since the 60s. You know, it's like they get an ideology and some person comes along and says, hey, you know, this is what's really evil is this capitalist machine. You know, it's like, well, you know, that capitalist machine is responsible for pretty much annihilating not only slavery, but poverty to a large degree. Mm-hmm. So you're welcome.
Mm-hmm. But they are tomorrow's senators and congressmen.
Yep.
And
that's
scary.
Yep.
Governors and mayors.
So don't sell your guns, folks.
Live and let live.
I love the movie Red Dawn because it not only does it happen in Spokane, the new one with Chris Hemsworth, not the new one. It was produced, gosh, I don't know, probably a decade ago. But it happens in Spokane, which is really close to home.
I know. You see the scenes down there.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah. And it does kind of seem like, yeah, that's probably the way that it would happen here. You would have pockets of ordinary Americans that would rise up with their God-given right to bear arms, and it would be guerrilla warfare. It would be Ukraine times 20.
Mm-hmm. And who's the enemy?
Whoever it would be. Yeah.
Whoever in the blank.
Whoever had the guts to try and invade our actual borders, which the logistics of doing that would just be ridiculous. I mean,
they make great movies, though, don't
they? They make great movies, but the idea that you're going to get a cargo plane with troops that could parachute in across the Pacific Ocean to land and occupy a city.
If it was disguised as a weather balloon, we'd just let it go, right?
How many troops could you get in a weather balloon, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You got to make it look like that on radar.
So, in any case, the reported death toll of more than 1,400 Israelis from Hamas terrorist attacks is proportional to about 48,300 Americans. So if that were to happen to us, like it happened in September 11th, you remember the response from Americans in September 11th when the planes flew into the towers and 2,977 people were killed. I mean, there were songs written. There were flags in every car. There was a unrivaled military response that is still unrivaled.
And surge of
to this
people
day.
Getting into the military to go.
I mean, the support for that was so massive. Well, if you could say that this was Israel's 9/11, and their response in Hamas is their Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And they're just doing what they got to do to protect their people. And guess what? When you engage in conflict, innocent people die. That's what happens. It's just it's a part of war. It's so ridiculous to hear these people on the news talk about all the innocent lives that were lost when Israel attacked Palestine, and that we should go for peace because we don't want any more innocent people to die. It's like, no, we don't want innocent people to die. No, we don't.
We know there will never be peace in the Middle East as long as one Israeli is alive, because Palestine wants complete.
Oh no, they
total
want
annihilation.
They want them all dead.
Yeah.
So does Iran. Yeah, Iran wants all Jews dead. That's their goal. They want them all annihilated. And to support that kind of thing is just like the brown shirts in Germany. You know, it's like you're supporting this ideology that we're just going to go in and wipe these people out. You know, if that was turned around in another direction, you'd be fighting against it. But because it's a Jew, I guess it's okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought process,
isn't it?
It comes in when it's a Jewish person.
It's strange. It's almost as if they have a supernatural prejudice against them because they're God's chosen people.
Imagine that.
That's a weird thought, isn't it? But it just illustrates, like, it's like every time you turn around, there's some new group that wants to annihilate the Jews.
And now we follow that same God, and we are being persecuted in just about every country in the world, except for the United States. I mean, we get badgered at worst.
Yeah.
Worst case.
I mean, I think that there's pockets of that are rising up, and they're like, just here recently they arrested that kid in Coeur d'Alene that, you know, was going to go into some random church and try and kill as many people as he could. You know, it's like you're having more and more of that stuff come up, and you're going to have more and more of that stuff come up as time goes on, and as you make stands, and as you you know, do things like this podcast. You know, you're going to have
support of Israel.
Yeah. You know, if you support the Jews any at all, you're going to be hated by satanic forces. It's the nature of the beast. He hates Israel. And, you know, I mean, I'm never going to be the guy that supports Israel no matter what, like everything that they do, because they're God's chosen people, because I'm pretty sure last time I checked, they're fallible as well. And they do some pretty ridiculous things sometimes. You know, I mean, there's things that you just can't support.
Well, in my question earlier, you know, is this the Israel, is this the Jerusalem of the Bible, or is this something else that we have today?
That's a great question.
And, you know, it's God's people, yes, but do those people think they're God's people?
Yeah, and then, you know, it kind of goes into, you know, what level of covenant that you buy into, and, you know, what happened when Jesus came. You know, did he nullify that covenant, or are we all part of the same covenant, like a covenant theologist would tell you? You know, I mean, it's like, you know, it's not necessarily clear how that all works out in the scope of our relationship with God. But I do know this, right, that God did promise them unconditionally that he would give them a land, and that land would be theirs, and that they would prosper. And whether he's fulfilled that contract or not, I guess, is debatable. And, you know, that they have kind of frittered away their inheritance, you know, kind of like
prodigal son.
Well, like Esau, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, did you fritter it away? Did you give it away? Did you give away your birthright? You know, that could be a really great example of, you know, maybe that's what happened. I mean, who knows? I know this, that from a practical standpoint, there should never be a point where we support any group that's willing to go into a nation and murder women and children in cold blood. That should never be a thing. I don't care who it is. And, you know, that we have Americans that are willing to do that is appalling to me. It's just appalling to me. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because these are the same people that are willing to murder children in the womb. So, you know, why should I be surprised that they're okay with Jews being murdered in the streets?
Right.
You know, in a non-military way. You know, I mean, it's these guys just came in and just shot unarmed women and children and murdered them in the streets, raping people, stealing from them, kidnapping people. They still have hundreds of Jews over there in captivity, you know, that they haven't released. You know, I mean,
and we don't have a good finger on that, so we don't know how many are still alive, how many have died, you know, what conditions they're in, are they getting fed?
We don't know, because we have weak leadership. We're just now getting Blinken over there to really kind of get his feet on the ground to really see what's going on.
This pier or dock that we are building over there, I heard that Hamas terrorists are shooting at the people that are building that. I haven't substantiated.
I don't know anything about that.
You know about the dock for them to bring the aid in. We're sending aid over there, but there's no port that can handle the ship, so they're building a temporary port over there so that this aid can come in. You haven't heard about that?
I haven't heard about that. I was just thinking about how inefficient that seems.
Yeah. We're going to go build this port so these ships can come in. And they're talking, millions, 1 point some million meals a day.
I mean, we have
come in
massive cargo planes. You just fly into their airport and land and just keep doing that on a rotation.
If the airports are landable.
Well, yeah, they're landing commercial planes in Israel. It's not like Israel shut down.
Well, if Hamas is controlling the airport in Palestine, does Palestine even have its own airport? I don't know.
Oh, this dock is being built in Palestine.
Yeah, I think they want to go directly to Palestine and not have to go through Syria or Israel or Egypt.
That just demonstrates how stupid we are.
I don't know.
Do we actually think that we're going to build a dock and it's going to go to support the Palestinian people? That's what we really, truly think.
Could be symbolic.
Unbelievable.
Kind of like the Mercy ships in New York.
Oh, yeah, for COVID. Yeah. Unreal.
We'll create this giant symbol of our compassion.
Yeah.
It'll be for naught.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of work to do when the dust settles and, when the war is at a point where Israel is comfortable, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
Israel's not going to stop until they're at a level where they're comfortable with what's going on. They may or may not give the land back to Palestine. That remains to be seen. I think that I wouldn't. If I were Netanyahu, I don't think I would, give any of that land back to the Palestinians. I'd tear them walls down and I'd build Jewish settlements in there faster than you can blink your eye.
Giving them land is like giving them weapons.
No, it's like, here, please establish a terrorist state in our own borders. That would be great.
So here's the Department of Defense will undertake an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier on the coast of Gaza to deliver up to 2 million humanitarian aid meals per day, the Pentagon announced today, and that's back in March 8th. So, and some of the stuff I've been following, it's like, they show up and they get shot at.
Yeah, like, shocker.
Whoa, wait a minute, guys. This food is for you.
Yeah.
Your people.
No, Hamas will go in there and steal all that, and then they'll use it for themselves and sell the rest.
Well, they'll be told that it's the Americans coming.
Yep.
To aid Israel from the West.
Yep.
Yeah. And they need to be eradicated.
Unreal. So why we should support Israel and not Hamas or Palestine? So America's support of Israel should not exclude humanitarian support of the innocent victims of war, obviously, Israel or Palestine. We have a Christian duty to extend mercy and aid to those who are suffering through no fault of their own. There is some fault of their own, but not like their children. There's people who are truly innocent in all of that are suffering at the hands of of other people's poor decisions.
Yeah, I read part of this is kind of generational. That this other article pointed out that the election in 2006, it was like there was an adult population and there was this giant gap because they had settled Palestine and they were having children, so there was no middle. And now that older generation has mostly passed, and it's these children who grew up in Palestine as their homeland who basically voted out the Fatah government, which was the old regime that was just as oppressive
as Hamas,
but not as military. So it was a vote against Fatah that brought in Hamas because they didn't understand who Hamas was because they never lived in a war-torn Palestine. And so now they're kind of a victim of their own ignorance.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And now there are no more elections and Hamas is entrenched. And so this is what they're left with.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's some kind of generational turning over here that caused some circumstances.
You have to wonder if Israel was waiting for the moment that the generations would catch up and be like, oh, wait a minute, this is not right. Because there's a natural cycling of, ideologies. Maybe they're kind of waiting on that, but maybe Hamas was losing control. Maybe that's why they started doing all this, Maybe they were losing the...
Well, you get Big Brother Iran steps in and says, we got some dollars.
Mm-hmm.
We got some drones.
Do you?
Not anymore. They don't.
Do you guys find it exhausting to even try to keep up with what's going on?
Oh, yeah.
I can see so fast. Why, as the population of the earth increased, more and more people just backed away and said, yeah, let's vote somebody in who likes doing this kind of stuff and just let them have at it. I mean, because I look at all the world leaders and there's not too many, if any, that I can look to and go, oh, this guy's good. He's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And it is exhausting to me.
It is.
I'm just getting too old to even, I don't want to say I don't care. I do care. But at the same time, there's just too many factions, too many directions, too many places to go. And the fact that we are at that point in time where the world is connected. Everybody, everywhere sees everything almost instantly.
Yeah.
And we've discussed it before, that, the mud huts in Africa and everything, and with a satellite dish, stuck on the side of it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. They can't eat, but they've got a cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I get tired of the routine for sure. It is definitely one thing after another. And I kind of have just gotten to the point where I can only affect what is directly around me. I mean, like the federal government it's to me, I feel like it's gone. It's like there's nothing left of it. It's just a business at this point. You got people that have been in there like Joe Biden for, 40 years. He's got a net worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars. He's milked the American taxpayer, for so much wealth, way more wealth than a person who is employed in Congress could make. Yet here he is, he's a multi-millionaire.
And still the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah. Shockingly. The
yes.
most powerful. I mean, he can barely walk down a flight of stairs, and he's the most powerful.
He has trouble going up
in the world. Like, he has trouble walking. You seen him walking lately? He looks like a cyborg. Yeah. I don't know what's going on over there. Maybe he is a cyborg.
4 more years.
So, we'll see what happens. But, I agree with you. It's exhausting. And it becomes impossible to keep track of all the things.
Yeah.
There's just so much.
Yeah.
It's like just a bombardment of just things all the time.
I knew a wise man that once said, no matter how bad it gets, our job doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. That was wisdom that I have been sitting on for years now. That, it's still preaching Christ, preach the gospel.
It makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like, I can look at what's happening in Israel, and I can look at what's happening in our federal government, and I can look at what's happening in our state government and local government. And, I can engage with it to a certain degree, but at some point, it's really nice to sit back and go, you know what? If all this stuff goes to hell, my job's the same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just changes the scope at which I do that, and the tactics that are used to make that happen.
Yeah.
And how we get that done as a group. And so, I think if I were a church leader, what I would do is I would be preparing people emotionally, and spiritually and intellectually for that possibility. That no matter what, if you lose control of everything and you are hiding in a mine shaft somewhere, our job does not change. You'll be doing tactical sorties into civilized populations to proliferate the gospel in any way that you can.
Yeah.
That would be wild, wouldn't it?
Mm.
All right, we're sending out our A team to get these tracks out. Let's go. That's the way it'll be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to order some more tracks?
We may have a group of ladies sitting at a desk somewhere just writing them out.
Writing them out. Yeah,
at
that's
some
true.
point.
Yeah.
So it might be better to invest in cases of pencils and paper. Just a thought. So So what are some of the reasons that Americans should be able to agree on? We should support any country against a terrorist regime. Israel's not at war with a peaceful Palestinian citizen and has taken so many measures to attempt to protect them despite them electing Hamas into that country in 2006, which, by the way, was the last time an election was held. Hamas took control and there was never an election after that.
Who's the oppressor now?
Yeah, who's the oppressor? And Israel could have legitimately went in there and done all kinds of things, but they took their hand off the wheel. They said, hey, look, this is your place. You do what you want to with it. And from 2006 up until today, Israel's not responsible for their poverty. We've been pumping aid into that place for over a decade, and the people have hardly seen any of that aid. The place was beyond a third world country before Israel ever attacked it. And in fact, that might be why Hamas did it, was because they knew that it was becoming apparent that they had driven this country into the ground and that people were going to start rebelling. And so we need to have an enemy. We need a common enemy.
Yeah.
So let's create one,
I just looked up Hamas's religious beliefs.
Oh my Lord. They're abysmal.
Don't repeat them on the air. He'll start a panic.
No, this is great. No, this is perfect. I mean, Hamas believes that the message of Islam upholds the value of truth, justice, freedom,
in the American way,
and dignity.
Oh no.
And prohibits all forms of injustice and incriminates oppressors irrespective of their religion, race, gender, or nationality. Oh, there's a statement that is
that come out of?
Yeah. All
Winston something.
Well, and then all of their, of
Wilson
course,
Center.
Of course, that is obvious because when they went in and murdered women and children in cold blood, that was a intifada. That was a justified religious attack.
Yes.
Yeah. So Hamas and Hezbollah want to utterly destroy Israel. You would think that in the terms of critical theory and in terms of the oppressor versus the oppressed, there is an obvious oppressor here, and it's Hamas. If you are a person who believes in critical theory, just picking the person that has the most money or has the least amount of money is not how that works. You can be an oppressor and be the smaller portion of that, and they're oppressing the Jewish people in a very real way. Not anymore, because there's tanks rolling through where you used to sit. So congratulations. Good job. You guys did really well. Hamas's war crimes in the October 7th attack and inhumane treatment of its hostages is a documented fact.
Yep.
There's no denying it. I mean, there's video after video after video of them just in cold blood murdering unarmed women and children and men, for that matter. Old men, boys. It's like diabolical evil. Israel stabilized the entire Middle East region against the spread of radical Islam. In that area, perhaps that there was some great strides made. They were stabilizing it. They had good relations with other nations around them. I mean, they were at least stable relations. The only ones that they don't have stable relations with are these Islamic extremists like Hamas and Iran and even portions of Iraq now. It's like you got all these guys rising up that are just like.
But they keep trying.
Yeah, they do. Israel has made numerous technological contributions that benefit not only Americans, but all mankind.
Mm-hmm. True.
Hamas has made 0 contributions to mankind.
Yep.
I can't think of one.
Well,
they did put their military complex under a hospital.
Oh,
I mean, I guess
great idea.
There was some engineering there.
Yeah,
Great
I mean,
idea.
We support Ukraine, who Russia attacked unprovoked. Iran, through Hamas, attacked Israel without provocation. So why would we not support Israel? It's so wild to me that these kids that support Palestine and Hamas, it's just...
Well, that's what I said earlier. What are they looking at? What are they reading? What are they hearing? We know that the colleges in America, the bigger colleges, are perpetrating that ideology. But at the same time, don't these kids have brains? Don't they stop?
I think they're doing it in a
look?
vacuum.
It's a possibility.
Outside news and influence and lectures and information are just not.
When you got these professors, that are promoting this crap.
And why?
Because they believe it. It's a religion.
It's a delusion.
It
Delusion.
Well, it's a delusion, but it is a religion.
Yeah.
To them, it's a religion. They truly believe this.
Yeah. Their God is evolution, and here's how we
That's their moral
promote
high
it.
ground.
Yeah.
Well, it's atheistic morality. It's like, their morality is based on whatever happens to feel good at the moment, and this relativity that they kind of live in. It has no stabilizing feature. So that's why you can support Ukraine one day and then you support Palestine the next. If Hamas was in Ukraine, they'd be murdering Ukrainians left and right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they wouldn't care. You've got radical Muslims in London right now that are just walking around punching women in the face just because it's fun. It's like, you're supporting that. That's the ideology that you're supporting. And the shame of it is that if you are a person in the United States of America that is a Muslim, that is a peaceful Muslim, which there are, and you're just trying to live your life, you now get lumped into that group with every group that exists, whether you want to or not. And I feel bad for those people.
Yeah, because their ideology is not at all.
It's not the same. It's not aligned.
What the radicals are.
They interpret the Quran completely differently than people who are from radical Islam.
Yeah, they really are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Oh yeah, could you imagine? But what are you going to do?
God bless them. Help them to speak out.
What they need is Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Amen to that.
Yeah. And if you guys if you are a Muslim out there, a peace-loving Muslim, let me tell you something. There is a Savior who loves you, and his name is Jesus. And if you would accept him, you could be free of all that.
Yeah. Amen.
You really could.
That is the truth.
We're way over time. You got any last thoughts,
right.
Ken?
Yeah, a couple. One, if you're listening to this and you have any young people in your influence, college students in your family or friends or whatever, and if they are not absolutely entrenched in critical theory and supporting this movement, and they're questioning, what is this all about, grandpa or grandma, whatever, mom and dad, try to help them understand that it's a much bigger, deeper, nuanced issue than just what they may be led to believe by their peers.
Yeah.
Try to help them educate themselves on all that's at work here in this. and stand up for the truth. And then the other part of that is, we haven't gone too far here this morning in this episode. But like Chris had mentioned, there was an arrest in Coeur d'Alene just weeks ago of a radical who wanted to attack a church. And so here we are. We're a church. We're speaking out against this thing. And so I'd ask you to pray for the pastors, the members, the church here in Athol, and other churches that are standing up for the truth and aren't afraid to speak out against the darkness that's surrounding us and that is increasingly creeping into the younger generations and those who don't believe in Christ. So pray for that. Pray not just for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of North Idaho and other regions where Christianity is alive and well and attempting to have an influence on its greater culture. And so pray for us. Pray protection for us, our families, and the members here, and Juro as well, of course.
Yeah, amen. Greg?
Well, just echo, of course, what Ken just said, and I think I brought up earlier the amount of information that's out there is overwhelming.
Yep.
So pick and choose. Pray about the news that you pursue. Look for sources that are faith-based. Look for sources that are trustworthy. And you can do that with many advisors. You can do that through prayer. You can ask us. We
stay off the networks.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. If it's got 3 letters in it, don't go there.
Yeah.
But get involved, and start it at the local level, and let's get people that love the Lord into our government in order to right this ship.
Bring peace.
Bring peace. Yeah, absolutely. And we have, in North Idaho, we have a lot of people that we can support that believe the same way that we do. And so I would just suggest, finding out them. Don't just take what comes in the mail as your voting guide. Do your research. And then don't when you get overwhelmed, take a walk in the woods and come back. It's not going to go away. And if we ignore it and don't participate in it, we're not helping anybody's cause.
Yeah, it's good. Well, that about does it for us today. As always, thank you for joining us. If you have a comment, question, or an idea for an episode, send us an email to 3p@atholbaptistchurch.org. If your idea gets used on the show, you could be the proud recipient of the now world-famous 3P coffee mug. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks again to Athol Baptist Church and its members for their generous support of this ministry. And again, thank you for listening, and until next time, remember the Great Commission. Go into all the world, reach the lost with the gospel, and build disciples who can do the same. And with that, we are out. Bye.